The glow from the chandelier cascaded like liquid gold onto the pristine marble floors of Elysian, an exclusive dining sanctuary tucked into the upper edge of Manhattan. At a corner near the kitchen doors, Lily Park adjusted her black waist apron for the 10th time that evening. Her slender fingers trembled slightly as they clutched a tray of champagne flutes. At 24 years old, Lily had been working at Elysian for 8 months, and yet, the place never stopped making her nervous. The scent of aged wine and roasted duck wafted through the air as powerful conversations hummed from every table. Tonight, the restaurant was teeming with the city's elite politicians, business tycoons, socialists seat deep in whispers worth millions or words sharp enough to make or destroy reputations. With her graceful posture and alert eyes, Lily maneuvered between tables like a seasoned dancer. Still, the tight knot of tension in her stomach never relaxed. Her degree in comparative literature from NYU felt like a distant memory, especially under the pressure of balancing 2 jobs to pay for graduate school and support her younger brother's tuition back home in Pasadena. Every night she poured fine wine for people who spent more on a bottle than her family earned in a month. But she never let herself be bitter. Instead, she watched, observed, collected their mannerisms, speech patterns, the absurdities of power, and the subtle shifts of emotion behind every fake smile and whispered deal. One day, she would write it all down in a novel, a real one that mattered. The evening passed steadily until a request came in from table 12, the finest bottle of Bordeaux on the menu. Lily exhaled softly and nodded to the sommelier, who delicately passed the vintage bottle to her. She held it with reverence. Sight cost more than 4 months of her salary. She moved across the room with utmost care, but halfway there, something shifted, a prickling on the back of her neck, as though someone were watching her, not casually but intently. Her eyes flicked to table 7. A man sat alone, tall, handsome in a way that could stop time. Steel gray eyes, dark hair with a few strands out of place in a perfectly careless way. He wasn't eating. He wasn't even on his phone. He was watching her, and not the way men sometimes watched. There was no arrogance in his gaze, no hunger, just curiosity and something else, recognition. Lily's heart picked up speed. Unbeknownst to her, the man at table 7 was Adrian Cole, the elusive CEO of Cole Systems, a tech conglomerate that had changed the face of AI over the last decade. At 32, Adrian had amassed over $12 billion in net worth and an empire that made him one of the youngest and most influential billionaires in the country. But right now, Adrian wasn't thinking about algorithms or mergers. He was watching a woman who had no idea who he was, and that was precisely what held him captive. There was something strikingly different about her. The careful grace in her movement, the way she smiled with sincerity at a grumpy old man, then moments later gave the same kindness to a wealthy woman draped in diamonds. She moved like someone who saw through the noise, who carried herself with dignity even when the world gave her little. He had arrived 30 minutes ago for a business dinner that got cancelled last minute, but some of things made him stay. Lily had nearly reached table 12 when it happened. A fellow waiter rushed past her with a loaded tray. The impact was slight but disastrous. The wine bottle slipped, time slowed, glass exploded on the floor, and dark red liquid spread like blood across the white marble. The entire restaurant gasped. Forks froze mid-air. Conversations stopped mid-word. Lily's face drained of color. She dropped to her knees, reaching for the shattered remains, her fingers trembling as she whispered, I'm so sorry, over and over. Panic clawed at her throat. That wine alone could have paid for her brother's semester. She would be fired, worse, charged, and then a pair of black Italian leather shoes stopped in front of her. A warm, deep voice asked, Are you hurt? Lily looked up. It was him. The man with the steel gray eyes and impossibly handsome face was kneeling beside her. His charcoal gray suit fit him like it was molded for his frame, and his cologne expensive, subtle wrapped around her like silk. I'm fine, Lily said quickly, cheeks burning with shame. Just clumsy. He offered her his hand. The moment their fingers touched, something electric surged between them, real, undeniable. Lily stood slowly, her eyes not leaving his. Accidents happen, Adrian said gently. Wine can be replaced. Are you sure you're okay? The restaurant manager, Mr. Langston, stormed toward them, red-faced and sputtering apologies. Miss Park, I'm terribly sorry, sir. She will be disciplined, and the wine will be replaced immediately. Adrian's expression hardened. There's no need for discipline, he said. It was an accident, and I'd like to speak to Miss Park privately, if I may. Lily's head whipped toward him. 10 minutes later, she found herself seated across from Adrian in the cramped employee break room. Her hands were still shaking. I don't understand, she said, arms crossed tightly over her chest. Why are you being so kind? Do you know who I am? Adrian smiled, and suddenly, the intensity of his presence softened, making him look younger, more human. I know you're someone who treats people with respect regardless of their net worth. Lily blinked. That's not very common in your world. No, he said simply. It's not. I'm Adrian Cole, he added after a pause. Her eyes widened. She had heard that name. Everyone had. He was in magazines, headlines, Forbes lists. I still don't understand, she said softly. Why are you talking to me? He reached into his pocket and handed her a crisp, elegant business card. Because I'd like to have coffee with you tomorrow. Not as Adrian called the CEO, but as a man intrigued by a woman who made serving tables look like art. She stared at the card like it might explode. I'm just a graduate student, she said. You must know this makes no sense. Maybe that's what makes it interesting, Adrian replied. What do you study? He asked. Literature, Lily answered before she could stop herself. I'm working on a thesis about romantic narratives in contemporary fiction. His smile widened. I majored in English literature before I sold my soul to computer science. Jane Austen or the Bronte sisters? She asked, still wary. Both, he said. But I've got a soft spot for Gaskell. Lily blinked. North and South. Adrian nodded. Love across class lines. Misunderstandings, vulnerability, redemption. What's not to love? And just like that, the space between them shifted. He wasn't a billionaire anymore. He was a man who remembered the smell of old books and the feeling of losing yourself in a story. That night, Lily sat on the floor of her tiny queen's apartment, the business card resting like a promise on her kitchen table. Her roommate, Mia, nearly screamed with excitement. Lily, do you understand what just happened? Adrian freaking Cole asked you out. That's exactly the problem, Lily whispered. What if I don't belong in his world? Mia tilted her head. What if he's tired of that world? What if he wants yours? Lily stared at the cart again. What if? The next morning dawned cold and gray. Manhattan still half asleep under a misty veil. Lily Park stood at her closet, heart pounding, trying to decide what to wear. The weather outside was irrelevant compared to the storm inside her. Her hands brushed over blouses and sweaters, eventually landing on a simple sapphire blue knit top that flattered her skin and framed her eyes. She pulled on her best pair of jaunts, ones with no phrase and no history of thrift store pricing tags. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. It was her. That mattered more than pretending to be someone else. The cafe she had chosen was tucked into a quiet corner of Greenwich Village, an old haunt from her undergrad days with tiny booths, chalkboard menus, and oversweet pastries served on mismatched plates. It was neutral ground safe, unpretentious, and untouched by the cold sharpness of Adrian Cole's world. She arrived 10 minutes early. Nervous energy thrummed in her fingers as she wrapped them around a warm mug of coffee. When the bell above the door jingled, her breath caught. Adrian stepped inside, looking entirely unlike the image splashed across magazine covers. No tailored three-piece suit, no tie, no glinting cufflinks, just dark jeans, a gray sweater that hinted at his athletic frame, and a black leather jacket that made him look surprisingly human. Ordinary, handsome in a way that didn't scream power but pulled attention anyway. His smile when he saw her was soft and real. I wasn't sure you'd come, he said, sliding into the seat across from her. I almost didn't, Lily admitted with a half laugh. This might be the strangest thing I've ever done. Strange is underrated, Adrian said. So is coffee that doesn't cost $30. They ordered croissants and plain coffees. No fancy lattes. No extra foam. Just warm mugs and simplicity. And conversation. For over an hour, they talked and talked. Not about money, or power, or media scandals, but about books, about family, about dreams, about the ache of sacrifice. Lily told him how she was raised by a single mother, how her younger brother had been born with heart complications and nearly died before his 4th birthday, how she worked jobs to keep his tuition covered and her own future afloat. Adrian listened, not the way people pretended to listen, not with polite nods and far-off eyes. He leaned in, asked questions, circled back to her words like they mattered. You switched from literature to computer science, Lily said during a lull. Why? His jaw tightened slightly, the playfulness fading from his eyes. My dad died when I was 20. Massive heart attack. No warning, he paused. Suddenly I was responsible for my mom and my girlfriend at the time. She didn't think poetry could pay the mortgage. I'm sorry, Lily said softly. I had a knack for code. So, I buried the grief and built something. Fast, maybe too fast. He looked at her. Until last night, I didn't realize how long it's been since I talked to someone who actually sees me. Lily swallowed. This wasn't a man chasing a thrill. He wasn't bored or lonely. He was starving for something real. Adrian, she said gently, why me? He didn't hesitate. Because when you look at me, you don't see headlines or dollar signs. You don't flinch at my name or stumble over words trying to impress me. You treated everyone in that restaurant with the same grace, whether they were billionaires or old men in polyester suits. You saw me, not the suit, not the legend, just me. Lily's throat went dry, because that was exactly what she had done. The rest of the afternoon passed in flashes of laughter, in soft glances, in words so simple they felt profound. They debated Victorian literature versus modern minimalism. She told him about her thesis, and he confessed his favorite novel was North and South. They laughed at the irony. By the time Lily checked her phone, it was nearly evening. I have a shift tonight, she said reluctantly, standing. I'll walk you, Adrian offered quickly. In a Rolls-Royce, she teased. He chuckled. I walked here. I live about 6 blocks away. You walked. I try to remember what real sidewalks feel like. As they strolled through the leaf-littered streets, Adrian stopped to pet a golden retriever, bought her a single sunflower from a vendor on the corner, asked her opinion on the city's best bookstore. For a moment, Lily forgot that this man had billions, that the world might be watching, that her hands still smelled faintly of restaurant-grade hand soap. He wasn't a CEO. He was Adrian, and he looked at her like she was the most fascinating book he'd ever read. When they reached the subway, he turned to her. Have dinner with me tomorrow, he said. Somewhere nice, but not intimidating. I want to do this properly. His words weren't commanding. They weren't dressed in power or expectation. They were a request from a man who wanted her presence and her compliance. Lily's heart raced. She thought of all the reasons to say no, and yet the one reason to say yes felt louder. I'd like that, she said softly, and Adrian's smile said everything. That night, in her tiny apartment, Lily couldn't sleep. The sunflower sat in a vase on the windowsill, its golden face turned toward the moonlight. Across the city, Adrian stood on his penthouse balcony, hands in his pockets, heart full and unsettled. Something had shifted. Neither of them would ever be the same again. 3 weeks passed like chapters in a story Lily Park never imagined herself writing. What had started as a chance encounter in a marble-floored restaurant had transformed into something that felt quietly extraordinary. Every night Adrian Cole would find a way to reach her through a text message, a walk through Central Park, a dinner in a cozy neighborhood spot where no one looked twice at a billionaire holding the hand of a graduate student. They were careful, for his sake. At first, the discretion felt exciting, romantic even. They were wrapped in their own private world. just the two of them. Adrian shielded her from flashing cameras and society's scrutiny like a knight guarding something precious. But slowly, that world began to shrink. One night over ravioli in a small Italian restaurant in Brooklyn, Lily noticed it. The chef, "We never go anywhere near your world," she said gently, her spoon swirling absently through her gelato. Adrian paused mid-sip of espresso. "What do you mean?" "I mean," she said, her voice quiet but steady, "we always stay hidden. We avoid Manhattan. You never talk about your family, or your friends, or anything outside of this little pocket we've made." Adrian's gaze dropped to his cup. She could see the tension tighten across his shoulders, the way his hands clenched slightly. "Are you ashamed of me?" she asked. The question hung in the air like a tremor before an earthquake. Adrian looked up sharply. "What?" "Lily, no. God, no. I'm not ashamed. I'm protecting you." "From what?" He leaned forward, his voice low, urgent. "My world can be cruel, cold. It eats people alive, especially people it thinks don't belong. I've seen it happen to many times. I'm just trying to keep you safe." She pulled her hands from his. "But hiding me doesn't feel like safety. It feels like shame." His face contorted with pain. "You don't understand, Lily. They won't see you the way I do. They'll try to tear you apart. They'll make you feel small. Then maybe you need to decide if you're with someone you're proud of or someone you're afraid of being seen with," she said softly, her voice thick with unshed tears. That night, Adrian stood alone in his penthouse, staring out at the glittering skyline. Every light felt like a judgment. Every corner of his world had been built on ambition, but now, all he wanted was something honest, and that something was slipping through his fingers. The opportunity to fix everything came unexpectedly. Adrian's younger sister, Natalie Cole, a fierce-hearted social worker with a mind of her own, was organizing a charity gala for literacy programs in underserved communities. "You better bring someone interesting this time," she teased over lunch at their mother's brownstone. "No more of those emotionally vacant socialites who only care about handbags and Botox." Adrian smiled faintly. "I just might." And he meant it. That evening, he called Lily. "I know this might sound crazy," he said, pacing in his office, "but would you come to a gala with me this Saturday? It's for literacy programs. It's something you care about." Lily hesitated. "Adrian, I don't have anything to wear to something like that. I don't know how to behave in those rooms." "I'll take care of the dress," he said quickly. "And as for behavior, just be yourself. That's all I've ever wanted." 2 days later, Lily stood in the dressing room of a midtown boutique that smelled like luxury and money. A tailor fussed over the hem of a navy blue gown that shimmered like moonlight on water. It clung to her in all the right places and flowed like it belonged to royalty. She barely recognized herself in the mirror. Mia, her best friend and roommate, clutched her hand with watery eyes. "You look like a queen." "I look like someone I'm pretending to be," Lily whispered. Mia shook her head. "No, you just finally look like the woman he sees." When Adrian came to pick her up, he stood frozen in the doorway. For a long moment, he couldn't speak. He began, but words failed him. She offered a shy smile. "Still me. You're breathtaking," he said finally. "But yes, still you." The gala was held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, transformed for the night into a palace of flowers, candlelight, and soft string music. Diamond-studded guests twirled on the marble floor beneath crystal chandeliers. Lily clung to Adrian's arm as they entered. He introduced her not as a date or a +1 but as someone important. "This is Lily Park," he told guests with pride. "She's working on brilliant research in literature and narrative theory. She's the smartest person I know." And for a while, Lily believed she belonged. She talked about books and education with wealthy donors and politicians. She made them laugh, made them think. Adrian watched her with pride etched into every line of his face. Until she arrived, Eleanor Cole, Adrian's mother, elegant in black satin and pearls, with silver hair sculpted into perfection and a gaze sharp enough to slice marble. She moved through the room like royalty returning to her throne, Her eyes found them immediately. Sebastian, she said coolly, and this must be the Lily I've heard so much about. Lily offered her hand. It's an honor to meet you, Mrs. Call. Eleanor shook it briefly, gaze flicking over her like an appraiser evaluating a counterfeit. How lovely, she said with a tight smile. Sebastian tells me you're still a student. How refreshing to meet someone in the learning phase of life. Lily smiled, refusing to flinch. I'm passionate about education. It's wonderful that your family supports literacy programs. Yes, well, we believe in giving back, Eleanor replied, tone clipped. Sebastian, I need a word. Now, before Lily could protest, Eleanor had whisked him away into a side alcove. Lily stood alone, suddenly aware of every eye in the room. She had never felt more exposed, until a voice beside her whispered, "Don't let her get to you." Lily turned. It was Natalie, holding two glasses of champagne. My mother's talent is making everyone feel like they don't belong, she said. She once made me cry for majoring in social work instead of business. She's intimidating, Lily admitted. She's scared, Natalie replied, because my brother looks at you like you're the first good thing that's ever happened to him. Lily's eyes burned. Then Adrian returned, face pale and jaw set. Are you ready to go? He asked quietly. But the night's not over. For us, it is, he said. In the car, silence reigned until Lily couldn't take it anymore. What did she say? Adrian hesitated. Then, quietly, she gave me an ultimatum, and our relationship or risk being removed as CEO. Lily's breath left her in a rush. She's convinced the board that I've lost perspective, that you're a liability. She turned to him, voice barely above a whisper. Then maybe she's right. Lily, you have a company, a legacy. I'm just a graduate student who waits tables and wears borrowed gowns. What can I possibly offer you? Adrian reached for her hands, desperation in his eyes. You offer me everything that matters. Kindness, honesty, love, the real kind. Her voice trembled. But is love enough when the world is against us? He stared out the window for a long moment. I don't know, he whispered, but I want to find out. The next week was agony. Adrian spent every waking moment trying to devise a plan to save his company and protect Lily. Lawyers, PR teams, legal loopholes. Lily tried to return to normal life, but nothing felt the same. She couldn't study. She couldn't sleep. Everything reminded her of him. Her literature books now felt like taunts, every classic filled with tragic lovers and broken class barriers. Every novel reminding her that sometimes love didn't conquer all. One evening, she sat in the kitchen, tears streaming silently into her tea. Mia sat across from her, watching helplessly. You have to stop torturing yourself, Mia whispered. Either fight for him or let him go. But this limbo is breaking you. How do you fight when the world says you're not good enough? By proving them wrong. Lily looked up. Sebastian fell for you for a reason, Mia said. You're brilliant. You're strong. And he sees you. All of you. Isn't that worth fighting for? That night, Lily made a decision. She called Adrian. Come over, she said quietly. There's something I need to tell you. Adrian arrived at Lily's apartment just past 10 p.m. The street was quiet, her building dim, tucked between a laundromat and a corner deli. There was nothing remarkable about the place peeling paint, flickering hallway light, but to Adrian, it had begun to feel like the one corner of the city where he could breathe. Lily opened the door in a soft gray sweater and leggings, her hair in a loose braid. No makeup, no pretense, just her, and she had never looked more beautiful. Come in, she said, her voice tight. Adrian stepped inside, instinctively removing his shoes. The apartment was smolteny even, but it was warm, filled with the scent of tea and something floral. A single sunflower in a mason jar sat on the windowsill, still bright. He reached out, brushing her cheek with his knuckles. You've been crying. She nodded. A little. He followed her to the worn couch and sat. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she took a breath that sounded like it hurt. I've been thinking, she began, staring down at her hands, about everything. Your job, your mother, the the board. And us. Adrian's jaw clenched. Lily, if this is about giving up, let me finish, she said gently. I know you're trying to protect me, and I know you give up everything to keep me safe. But before you do, there's something I need you to know. Something I should have told you weeks ago. She turned to face him. Her eyes were wide, vulnerable. I've never been with anyone before. He frowned slightly. You mean, you're my first? Her voice was barely a whisper. Not just first boyfriend. First everything. First kiss. First time someone's ever seen me like this. Wanted me. I've never even been on a real date until you. Adrian stared at her, heart thundering. Yura. She nodded, cheeks flushing. I know. It probably seems impossible. I'm 24, not 16. But I've been focused on school, on my brother, on survival. Romance always felt like something that belonged to other people. Adrian reached for her hands. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was afraid you wouldn't believe me, or worse, that you'd treat me differently. Be careful with me. Gentle, like I'm fragile. But I'm not. I wanted you to want me, not out of obligation, not because you felt sorry for me. He pulled her close, his voice low and reverent. Lily, the fact that you trust me with something so sacred, it's the most beautiful thing anyone's ever given me. She looked up, tears brimming. Then show me. He blinked. What? Show me what it means to be loved by someone who truly sees me. Just one perfect night. Before everything falls apart. Adrian cupped her face, thumbs brushing the tears from her cheeks. We don't have to say goodbye. Maybe not, she whispered. But we both feel it creeping closer. Just tonight, let it be about us. He kissed her then, not like the suave billionaire, not like the powerful CEO, but like a man who had just been given something sacred. His lips were soft and slow, every movement asking permission. Her hands curled into his shirt as he deep in the kiss, then lifted her into his arms. He carried her gently to the small bed tucked in the corner of the room. There were no silks or chandeliers, no fine linens or ocean views. But that night, in the dim light of a borrowed lamp, that created something exquisite. Adrian was patient, tender, reverent. He kissed every inch of her like a vow, whispered reassurances into her skin, told her she was beautiful, brilliant, loved. He asked if she was okay a dozen times, and every time, she said yes with more certainty. When they came together, it wasn't awkward or fumbling, it was electric, honest, deep. Afterward, Lily lay curled in his arms, her head resting on his chest. His heart beat loud and steady beneath her ear. Morning sunlight peeked through the curtains as she stirred. You didn't sleep, she murmured, eyes still closed. I didn't want to, Adrian whispered. I just wanted to remember. She smiled, tracing patterns on his chest with her fingers. He kissed her hair. You're perfect, and I'll never regret last night. She propped herself on her elbow, gaze serious. Whatever happens next, I just want you to know that what we shared was real. My feelings for you are real. Adrian sat up slowly, cupping her face. I've made my decision, Lily. I'm not giving you up. She opened her mouth. But before she could reply, his phone buzzed, and buzzed again. Reluctantly, he picked it up. This is Adrian, he answered. Lily watched as his expression shifted from warmth to steel. I understand. I'll be there within the hour. He hung up, exhaling slowly. What is it? She asked. The board. They moved the vote up. It's today. Later that morning, Lily arrived at Elysian for her shift. Mr. Langston, the manager, stood near the back office, face grim. Miss Park, a moment, please. She followed him, heart sinking. We have to let you go, he said without ceremony. There have been photographers, reporters. This restaurant values discretion. But I've never missed a shift, Lily protested. Never broken a rule. It's not your performance, he said. It's the circus that's forming round your relationship. Lily gathered her things in silence, her throat burning. By the time she stepped outside, the bright morning light felt blinding. Her phone buzzed. From Adrian, board meeting starting now. Thinking of you. I love you. She stared at the screen, the message blurring through her tears. He was about to lose everything because of her, and she couldn't even keep a job. She spent the day walking aimlessly through Central Park, past the bench where Adrian had first told her he was falling in love with her. The city felt foreign, too loud, too sharp. Her phone rang. "Mia, it's all over social media," Mia said. "The firing, the photos. They're calling you the Billionaire's waitress." "I think," Lily began, voice hollow. "I think I need to let him go." "Lily, no. I love him enough to walk away," she said, "so he doesn't lose everything." And with her heart breaking, she walked to Adrian's office building. Every step was harder than the last. The receptionist barely looked at her. "Do you have an appointment?" "Tell him Lily Park is here. He'll want to see me." After a whispered call, the woman nodded. Top floor. The elevator ride felt endless. When the doors opened, Adrian turned from the window. He crossed the room in 3 strides, pulled her into his arms, and kissed her like a drowning man. "I was just about to call you. The vote was delayed. I still have time." But Lily stepped back. "I lost my job." "What?" "There were photographers. The restaurant couldn't take the attention." "I'll fix it." "No," she said gently. "You can't fix this. And that's the problem." Adrian froze. She walked to the window, staring out at the skyline. "Look at what you've built. This empire, this world. You're willing to lose it all for me." "I want to," he said, voice cracking. "And I'm not willing to let you." He stepped forward. "Lily, I love you," she whispered. "But love isn't always enough. I'll find a way. I'm going back to California." It landed like a bomb. "My brother called. I can finish my degree at Berkeley. It's better this way." Adrian stared at her, eyes wild. "You're running away. I'm setting you free." He reached for her. "You said I made you want to risk your heart." "And you did," she said, standing on her toes to kiss him long, deep, final. "But now I'm risking it by walking away." And she left, without looking back. The next morning, Adrian Cole stood before the boardroom of Cole Systems, the company he had built from code and caffeine and raw willpower. Round the polished mahogany table sat 12 men and women in tailored suits, their faces schooled in boardroom neutrality. At the head, like a monarch on a throne, sat Eleanor Coley, his mother. The air was still, dense with the tension of unspoken threats and sharpened judgments. Adrian adjusted his cufflinks slowly, the tailored navy suit crisp and pristine. But inside, he felt like a man on the edge of war. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice calm to calm. "I understand this meeting was called to address concerns regarding my personal conduct." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "Your relationship, Sebastian Adrianus, a distraction. Your judgment is being questioned by our European partners. Public perception is shifting." "You mean?" Adrian said coolly. "They're nervous because I'm dating a woman who doesn't have a trust fund." A few board members looked away. One cleared his throat. "It's not personal, Adrian. It's business." "No," Adrian said, voice rising slightly. "This is personal. Because you've all made it personal. You've judged a woman you've never met. A woman more intelligent and compassionate than half this boardroom. A woman who's done nothing but love me quietly, honestly, without conditions." Eleanor's voice sliced through the tension. "And that's precisely the problem. You've let love cloud your decision-making. You've lost sight of the responsibilities tied to your role, to this legacy." Adrian's smile was cold. "Funny, I thought the legacy was mine. Since I built this company from nothing. Since I gave up everything, glitch, peace, grief or this stream. You're risking the entire structure for what?" Eleanor snapped. "A waitress." He stepped forward, steel in his eyes. "Her name is Lily Park. She's a graduate student in literature. She's insightful, brilliant, and yes, she once waited tables to pay for school, and she never once asked me for a thing." Murmurs rippled round the room. Eleanor stood. "You leave us no choice, Adrian. If you insist on continuing this relationship, the board will be forced to vote for your removal as CEO. You'll retain stock, but you'll lose control. You'll lose your voice." He looked at every one of them. calmly, intentionally. Then I've already made my choice. Adrian pressed a button on the conference table. The screen behind him flickered to life, displaying a press release. "This will go out in 30 minutes, he said, effective immediately. I am stepping down as CEO of Coal Systems." Gasps echoed around the room. Eleanor froze. "You can't be serious," one board member said. "I'm choosing authenticity over approval, truth over optics, love over fear." Eleanor's hands trembled. "You're throwing away your life's work for a woman." "No," he said softly. "I'm finally living it." He turned to the screen again. "The release also announces my next Venturean educational technology foundation focused on accessibility, literacy, and storytelling in underserved communities." He paused. "The first scholarship will be named after Lily Park." Silence, utter and stunned. "I've liquidated my personal shares," he added. "They're being donated to fund literacy programs across the country. Consider it my final contribution to this sport." "Adrian, please," Eleanor whispered. He looked at her with anger, but with calm conviction. "I love you, Mother, but you taught me that power means control. Lily taught me something different, that vulnerability is in weakness, that loving someone fully, despite the cost, is the greatest strength of all." And then he walked out. 3 days later, Lily was packing the last of her things into two battered suitcases. The apartment felt hollow, like something important had already left. Mia sat on the bed, watching her. "Are you sure about this?" "He'll move on," Lily said, trying to convince herself. "He has his new company, his family, a world I don't belong in, but you belong to him." Lily paused, closing the zipper. The knock came just as she reached for her coat. Mia opened the door. There he stood, Adrian, in jeans and a worn hoodie. Not a billionaire to David a man. Behind him stood his assistant, Evan, holding an enormous bouquet of sunflowers. Lily stepped into the hallway, stunned. "Adrian," he stepped forward, then dropped to one knee. The hallway fell silent. Even time seemed to hold its breath. He opened a small velvet box. "Lily Park," he said softly, "you changed everything. You saw me when I was buried in a world of masks and money. You gave me your trust, your truth, and your heart." She blinked, already crying. "I gave up a company," he continued, "but I didn't lose anything. I found something better. U.S. And I want to build a life around that." He opened the box fully, revealing a single, elegant diamond. No glitz, no grandeur, just love. "Will you marry me?" She dropped to her knees in front of him. "You gave up everything," she whispered. He shook his head. "No, I gave up what wasn't real. You're real." And then she kissed him, with everything she had left. "Yes," she whispered against his lips. "Yes, Adrian, always yes." 6 months later, the former boardroom of Coal Systems had been transformed into something entirely new. Gone were the cold suits, the mirrored walls, the impersonal tone of market projections and quarterly goals. In their place stood shelves filled with books, walls painted with warm tones, and accented with quotes from authors across the world. In the center of it all, a glass plaque etched with words that made Lily's throat tighten every time she passed it. The Lily Park Foundation for Literature and Learning, because every story matters, especially the ones still waiting to be written. Lily stood in the middle of the foundation's headquarters, her hands ink-stained from reading scholarship applications, her heart full in a way she had never known possible. The past half year had not been easy. The media storm following Adrian's resignation had reached fever pitch. Headlines screamed of scandal, of irresponsibility, of love gone too far. But through it all, he stood by her. Every time, he held her hand through televised interviews, sat beside her at city council meetings, held umbrellas over her head in the pouring rain as they walked schoolyards in Queens to distribute books. They had taken something broken and turned it into something beautiful. Their relationship wasn't a fairy tale. It had hard days, misunderstandings, sleepless nights, lingering wounds from Eleanor Call's quiet disapproval, from paparazzi intrusion, from whispers Lily still heard when she entered rooms once reserved for the elite. But Adrian never faltered. Every time her confidence wavered, he reminded her of who she was, what she was worth, and slowly, she began to believe it too. That spring morning, Lily stood in front of a crowd of high school students in Harlem, their eyes bright as they waited for her to speak. Adrian watched from the back of the gymnasium, arms crossed, pride written all over his face. 6 years ago, Lily began. I was working double shifts at a Manhattan restaurant, trying to afford textbooks and tuition. I remember serving glasses of wine that cost more than my rent, and thinking this world is not made for people like me. A few teens nodded, recognizing the feeling. But here's the truth. The world doesn't decide what you deserve. You do. Your voice matters. Your stories matter. And the moment you realize that is the moment everything changes. She paused, scanning the crowd. I met a man who didn't fall in love with my resume, or my clothes, or my connections spacus. I had none of those. He fell in love with the way I saw the world, and because of that, we built something together, something that belongs to you now. The crowd erupted in applause. Later, as the students filed out and the media circled for quick interviews, Adrian approached with 2 coffees and that same old sunflower in a jar grin. You crushed it, he said, handing her a cup. I think I cried halfway through, Lily replied, sipping gratefully. You always cry halfway through. That's why they believe you. They stood in the sun, quiet for a moment. Then Adrian reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded envelope. What's this? Our wedding vows, he said casually, written on the back of a napkin. In case you forgot what you promised me. Lily unfolded it with a laugh. Her handwriting stared back at her. I promise to never let fear speak louder than love. She looked up at him, eyes shimmering, still holding me to it. Every day, their wedding was held in the botanical gardens just outside the city. No press, no billionaires, just their closest friends. Mia sobbing through her maid of honor speech, and a string quartet playing Claire de Lune as Lily walked barefoot down the stone path in a simple ivory dress. Adrian wore a navy suit. No tie, no spectacle, just a white pocket square with the embroidered initials LP. When they exchanged vows, Adrian said only 6 words. You made me human again, forever. And Lily said, you saw me before the world did. I'll never forget that. They danced under twinkle lights, cut a cake shape like an open book, passed out handwritten love poems instead of party favors. It was messy, perfect. In time, Eleanor called Kim round not with apologies, but with presents. She began attending the foundation's events, occasionally offering grants through her own connections. She never quite said I was wrong. But one day, she leaned toward Lily at a gala and said softly, you've made him softer. That's no easy task. And in Eleanor's world, that was the highest form of affection. Natalie, ever the rebel, joined the foundation full-time. She and Lily became fast friends, often swapping horror stories about media interviews and boardroom politics over coffee and too many scones. Mia, meanwhile, launched her own nonprofit focused on mental health access for students, also seeded by a grant from the foundation. They built a community, a movement, a life. 1 year later, on their anniversary, Adrian took Lily back to the original cafe where everything began. They sat at the same booth, same chipped table, same croissants. I have something for you, he said, reaching into his coat. It wasn't a diamond or keys to a new penthouse. It was a leather-bound notebook, blank pages. For your novel, he said, the one you've been putting off while building everyone else's dreams. Lily ran her hands over the cover. But what do I write? He leaned forward, his eyes soft. Start with this line. The first night he saw her, she dropped a bottle of Bordeaux worth more than her rent. Lily laughed, then cried, then kissed him until their coffees went cold. And that night, in their small brownstone apartment filled with books and flowers and half-finished grant applications, Lily opened the notebook and began to write. Not about billionaires, not about glass ceilings or velvet ropes. She wrote about courage, about choosing love when the world tells you it's impractical, about standing your ground in barred shoes, about becoming the kind of person you used to only write about in the margins. Epilogue. Years later, long after headlines had faded and companies had changed hands, students would sit in libraries bearing the Lily Park Foundation's emblem and read stories that made them feel seen. Somewhere in those pages, they would find characters who looked like them, who struggled and cried and rose. And they would know because someone once dared to risk everything for love that they could write their own endings to. Because that was the legacy Lily and Adrian left behind. Not one of wealth, but of words. And of choosing again and again the kind of love that rewrites the story.